This is me. When I got into the business, I definitely would say like her, Rodney, a few of the others in there were people that I kind of wanted to be like. So it's kind of cool now to be interviewing her so many years later. But Pam, we'll start it off kind of with where you're from, where you went to school, a little bit about your family, if you will, and then any other jobs that you've had before you got into real estate.
Okay. I have always been from the Richmond area, mainly Hanover. Um, and I'm an only child. And my parents got a divorce when I was 14. And at 16, I had a transfer to Tucker High School from Lee Davis. And then from there, I went to UVA for a year. That was one of my regrets, not finishing, finishing the 4-year program. But I ended up going to Braxton Business School and getting a associate's degree in accounting. Then my first real job was I worked at a pediatric center, and I was the bookkeeper. And after a couple of years there, it was fun, but I went and worked with my stepfather at Unicopy, and we sold office and computer supplies wholesale. And after a couple of years, I moved into the federal division. So it was the same company, but I sold to the VA medical centers all across the United States. And did that for over 20 years. And our company got bought out, and that division was closed. So I went back with the previous owner. She opened her own small company doing the same thing. And, I love that business, but it was hard for a small company to compete with these, bigger companies that come in and take over. So
Sure.
I was like, I've got to make a switch somewhere along here and, make some money. And so I was friends with Mike Chenault, and I was walking one morning, and he stopped the car and said, why don't you go into real estate, get your license? And by the way, happy birthday, Mike. And so I went, took the classes at night while I worked full time, got my license. And of course, I was going to go with Hometown. There was no other company I would even, think of. But trying to do it part time was hard, and it didn't last long. I decided to jump in and go full time. And I talked to Rodney, and I joined his team, and have never looked back. It's been a wonderful experience and a chance to make, good money and have fun. I mean, you work hard, but you also have fun. I've been happily married for 36 years. I have 2 wonderful adult children and 2 adorable grandchildren and a 100-pound lab who's spoiled rotten.
That is awesome, Pam. That's awesome. What's one thing you try to do every day to be successful as you run your real estate business?
I try to be organized. I think somebody else that I think Ashley that spoke about it said, I don't feel so old now because most everybody uses their phone for their schedules and so forth. But I do have to put everything on a paper planner and have to see it, all written out. I try to put everything in my schedule on that and definitely glance at it a lot, but definitely the night before so that I know, what I've got to do. And I'm in a different point in my life now than I was when I started. But when I started, I was the open house queen. I, did show like teacher shows and, just tried to pick up different buyers. Um, did my calls and Popeyes. I love doing Popeyes. But I didn't want to bombard my family and friends with, so it was easier to talk to strangers sometimes than your own family and friends. But I've been fortunate 'cause over time, uh, a lot of my business is referral business right now. But I think you've got to get involved. I'm involved in my church, my neighborhood. I'm the treasurer. And I think, you just got to do a good job for each client, and hopefully they're going to use you again or refer you.
Pam, you make such a good point. If you put in the right early effort, which is kind of the opposite of my story, if you put in the right early effort, then you have those dividends down the road. Kind of like Les Brown says, if you do the hard stuff now, life will become easy. But if you do the easy stuff all the time, life will feel hard. I think you're a good testament to that. And I coach a couple of business owners out there. And it's funny, you talk about a handwritten schedule, because that's kind of part of the foundation of what we go over with them. Phone and technology are phenomenal. There's no doubt about that. But having it front and center and having to write it, I think it slows you down a little bit and helps you kind of digest that next day a little bit better than maybe, plugging it into your phone. But, to each their own. What's one lesson that real estate has kind of taught you the hard way, Pam?
You can't take things personal, and realize that as hard as you work on these transactions, some are very easy and go so smooth, and others can go the opposite way. And as long as you have done everything you can, you may not please everybody, but don't let it set you back or keep you from moving on and being positive. And there's a lot of friends and family that may not use you right then, but they may refer you to someone else. So I would just say don't try not to let that bog you down, and be positive and try to understand what people are going through and getting back to them.
It makes sense. But a lot of stuff out there right now is like, hey, live your best life, be happy, find out what individual happiness looks like, which, hey, rock and roll, I'm definitely for that. I think it can be a dangerous mentality, though, because then you have everybody going around kind of thinking about themselves. Well, I think about a real estate business owner or anybody in a service realm. Well, you kind of have to try to think from the other person's perspective, from your client's perspective, rather than your own. And it can be emotional to do that, but understanding that for buyers and sellers, it's such a major experience that they don't do very much. I think sometimes we forget that in our industry. It's good to hear you say that, Pam. You can't take things personally, and it's always good to ask yourself if you've done everything you can, and if you have, you lay your head on your pillow and you go to sleep.
Right.
So let's flip the script on that. What's the funniest or craziest thing that has happened to you in real estate so far?
I've actually had several, but two of my favorites are, I had the honor of helping my pastor at my church and his wife look for houses. And that's when you had, 5-10 houses to look at instead of one. But we had gone out probably, once before. And so I kind of knew what they like to snack on or drink. And so I always carry a cooler, have a snack basket. And so my pastor sat in the back seat, and his wife sat up front with me, and we were going along. And I said, now help yourself to something to drink and eat. And I said to the wife, oh yeah, she loved LaCroix, seltzer waters or whatever they are. And I said, and I put, you know, one in there for you. And it's I could hear my pastor like kind of going through the cooler, you know, moving the ice around. And he's like, well, Joe is her name, you know, why don't you, she'll just take a water. And I said, no, I put a LaCroix in there. And he goes, no, that's okay. She'll be fine with that. Well, I got home, unpacked the cooler, and I had put a Natty Light in the cooler instead of, and I don't even drink Natty Light. I'm gonna blame that on my son. But so I text my pastor later that night and said, I'm so sorry. I don't normally pack beer to take and for my clients to have while we're looking at houses. And he said, Pam, we laughed about it all night. He said, I would have given anything if I could have opened the can, poured it out and, you know, had it crushed in the cooler. But my second favorite, and it's also sort of a lesson to learn that I learned from it, but it wasn't funny at the time, but it is now. I had a couple and we had like 6 or 7 houses. And the first house we went to was in Milestone. And there was a car in the driveway. It was really like the people had just gotten up from breakfast and left the house. You know, it was like stuff on the table. And we went through the house and the husband said, do you mind if I use the restroom? And I was like, sure, no problem. He comes out a few minutes later and he goes, Pam, I did number 2 and it won't flush. And so I went to the kitchen counter and there was no water in the house. So I called the agent and I said, the listing agent, I got his voicemail and I said, I am so sorry. I really don't know what to do, but we, you know, I didn't know if you had someone coming to show the house right after me, you know, and I just, you know, want to tell you, but I will come back, but we've got all these houses to see. Well, he wasn't very happy with me, the listing agent, and he told me I should never let my client use the bathroom. And I called him back and I said, first of all, you should have told me the water was turned off. And I said, you can't tell me you've never let, you know, your client go to the bathroom. But later I brought a bucket, went to my friends that live in Milestone, got the water and got the toilet going. But before I let any of my clients use the bathroom, I do make sure there's water in the house. So
you only get Pam once on that.
yeah,
I wrote
that's
down,
right. That was
Pam,
kind of embarrassing.
Right. I guess it pays to know other people in the neighborhoods that you're showing, so you can go get a bucket of water if you need it.
That's right. That's right. But
the first story, it's so cool that it was a natural light too. It just wouldn't be the same if it was a Miller Lite or a Bud Light, Pam.
Yeah.
Then, I guess to wrap up here, especially with you, Pam, you said it earlier, right? Like, hey, I got into it part-time, and in a short period of time, I realized that wasn't, you know, that wasn't jiving for me, or however it shook out. How many hours do you think a full-time agent should put in, let's say each day, to be successful? And then what are some things in addition to what you've told us that you think they can do to be effective with that time?
I think you're definitely gonna work at least 40 hours a week. It may not be on Monday that you work a full 8 hours, but you know, it could be you have a full weekend of where you're taking clients and showing houses. Or I mean, we don't really have a weekend. I mean, a lot of times our busiest time are Thursday through Sunday. So but I think to be full-time and to be successful, you've got to at least put 40 hours in. And you know, I just think between doing open houses and showing houses and being involved in your community, you know, and helping people in their senior year out there, and doing your calls and Popeyes, that, you know, that's what it's going to take.
I love that. So I wrote down 40 hours or more a week. You've got to keep those weekends and evenings in mind, right? People need us when they're not working. I think that's probably one of the earliest things for people in our industry to understand. There's no way for us to make everyone work with us during their work hours, and hope that they can be okay with that. I like the other aspect of people need to see you out there, right? They need to see you serving. They need to see you involved in the community. I've discovered that a byproduct of that service is then they're going to know what you do for a living, but they're going to know more about the content of your character, and they're going to want to be a part of what you do, which I think makes it easier to get your phone to ring for good reasons as time goes on. Pam, this is amazing. I've got about a half a page of notes, so thank you for that. As always, you're still teaching me 15 years later. I appreciate you.
Well, I don't know about that, but it's been a good 20 years. And I would say that, when things get slow, also to, you had mentioned Les Brown. I love him, and Brian Buffini, and Zig Ziglar, and of course our own Dean Cheatham. I think, when things get slow, or you need some motivation, they're good people to listen to or read their books.
Love that. Love that. Thank you, Pam. Good stuff.
Mhm.
All right, we're gonna transition to the Carytown kid here, Sean Gould. Sean, I'm personally excited to kind of talk to you today because I don't know as much about you as I'd like to. I know changes in the family over the last couple of years, which is phenomenal and life changing. But outside of that, man, I just know you smash it in real estate and seem like a pretty positive guy. So tell us your story, man. Same stuff. Where you're from? Where'd you go to school? A little bit about your family, and any other jobs you've had.
Okay. I guess kind of high level. Born and raised in Roanoke, Virginia. Spent my whole childhood there. My folks still live there, mom and dad, and went to the University of Mary Washington. Played collegiate tennis there. Still play a ton in day-to-day life and love it. So it's fun. Sport is a big life lesson realm for me, but played tennis. I studied economics of all things, which I don't know if I use, on a day-to-day basis, but I think it was really good for me to just kind of learn a lot about kind of business econ world. And I'm sure it flows into my day-to-day life in real estate, but moved to Charlotte, North Carolina after college. Lindsay and I got married. We'll be coming up on like 8 years married. We moved down there. I worked for an organization called Young Life, mentoring, high school kids, connecting with folks in the community, serving the community, from a kind of Christian perspective, kind of worldview. And so that was great. It was actually my bridge into real estate, because when I went off Young Life staff, moved to Richmond, Lindsay and I, longer story that I'm happy to chat about later, but it became very clear to us that we were to move from Charlotte into Richmond. We didn't know anybody at the time, maybe 5 folks in my phone that I could have reached out to, but really didn't have anybody. We slept on a couch at somebody's house for a month or two while we were finding an apartment. And I taught tennis at Westwood as like just a gig to pay some bills. And while I was teaching tennis, I connected with Tommy Sabiga at Hometown, and our connection was Young Life. And so I grabbed coffee with him across the street, actually here in Carytown at Sugar and Twine, and we just kind of kicked around some thoughts about real estate and life. And Tommy had previously been on Young Life staff, and so we had, I think, pretty similar perspectives on family and business and things. So I really appreciated just kind of his kind of candor and just perspective, on life. And so, got into real estate 2017, kind of end of summer there. Did it part-time as well, while I was still teaching tennis, until I just had a couple deals under my belt and felt that I could leave like something that I, a semi-regular income with tennis to be able to kind of keep the business going. So that was kind of my trajectory into the real estate world. Yeah, we've been in Richmond for 5-6 years now. My wife, Lindsay, and I, we've got 2 girls. Evelyn is our oldest. She's 2.5 years old. And then Adeline is 6 months. So love them to death. Being a girl dad is like the best thing that's ever happened to me. Like, I love being a dad, man. It's so wild, so wonderful. Like, life has never felt more chaotic, but more beautiful and had more richness and depth than it has in the past, like 2 years, 2.5, 3 years of having the girls a part of it. So, so that's been a blast. And I think it's like influenced the way I live. It's influences the way I approach business. It affects how I schedule my day, and so I think that's a massive part of like, okay, how do I what does my life look like when I wake up to I'm going to bed? Like, what do I want my life to look like? And, obviously family's massive for me.
I love that, man.
But yeah, that's kind of high level of kind of getting into Richmond and then getting into real estate and where we are now.
Sean, it's so good to hear you say that. And I echo a lot of what you said. I didn't realize early that I could start from within with my family, and real estate could be more of an outer layer of that. And in time, you create the choices that allow you to kind of, in the best ways, kind of blend the two worlds. Like my oldest is 9 now. He can hang out with me on showings, and he kind of he'll butt in and ask a couple of buyer's agent questions now and again because he's heard them a lot. You know what I mean? Like, but not looking at them as things that are detrimental to one another. Instead of looking at it as, this is great that we're in real estate, can serve the community, and our families can be a massive part of that, while we're setting an example for our kids to follow, to, serve others and still find financial success. I don't think that's a bad part either. That's really cool, man. I definitely want to hear off record kind of the calling from there to here, because I love those types of stories, man.
Yeah, man.
So let's talk about a hard lesson, man. Any hard lessons from real estate so far for you?
This actually, Pam and I didn't plan this, but I think one of the things that, honestly, it's not just like it's not an isolated lesson. To me, it's a recurring lesson that like folks will work with somebody else. And whether or not it's always a gut punch. How long I take to get over that gut punch seems to get shorter the longer that I've been in real estate, and the more that I begin to not take things personally, like Pam said. And so I think that's a lesson I've learned the hard way. I mean, even when you're top of mind, even when you've checked in with folks, even when you've dropped off gifts, like, people are complex. People will be people. They have their own thought process. They have the way they operate. And I might not understand at the time. Like, it might just be oblivious to me of why did you decide to work with that person? Folks just have reasons, and that's fine. And I don't need to Sherlock Holmes it. I don't need to dig it up. I don't need to air out anything. I can understand that and kind of move on. I read a quote once that has kind of been helpful in that lesson, and it's the past is a place to learn from, not live it in. And I think that's a great quote for not just this sort of experience, but maybe just in life and certainly in business, that the past is a place to learn from, not to live in. That, like, gosh, I might have some real rough days in real estate, but like, I can't live there. I can't camp out there. Like, I need to look ahead, look to the horizon. Hey, what are we working towards? What is that going to be? You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in the end result. And if not, you'll just get lost in kind of that cycle. So I think that's a hard one that I've learned.
That's powerful, man. there are things that have been said on here that to use your phrase, that they are gut punches, but there are things that we have to face and try to understand. When you were talking, Sean, the 7 habits of highly effective people, there's a concept in there that has stayed with me. The other concept, I've lost them as time has gone on, but there's one in there. It's seek first to understand and then to be understood. We're so quick to judge and pass emotional judgment on somebody, even a client, when we really most times don't truly know what they're going through in that moment, and they may not share that with us. And again,
Right.
that's their right, but it doesn't give us the right to pass judgment on them, especially if we want to retain them and build a relationship with them as time goes on. The other thing I wrote, I'm on a big Ted Lasso kick because Ted Lasso's back on, y'all.
Yeah, man.
You got to think like a goldfish. I don't remember if it's 5 or 10 seconds, but a goldfish has a 5 or 10 second memory, and then it just goes on with its life because it doesn't know any better. So, think like a goldfish.
Yeah, I love
like
Ted Lasso so much.
So many messages, man.
It's so good.
All right, so let's lighten it up, baby. What's the funniest or craziest thing that's happened to you in real estate so far?
Yeah. I don't have any natty light stories. Maybe that's like a year 10 thing. I do hope I have plenty of those. I honestly, one of the craziest things that's happened to me in real estate, it was the day of closing. It was like a $500,000 house in Charter Colony, and final walkthrough. We scheduled it like the day of closing. I think we were final walkthrough closings at 9 a.m. walkthrough, 10 a.m. closing. And I get there a little earlier than the client, get the door, get there, get the door open, get some lights on. And I'm like walking up to the house. It's a rainy day. And as I'm getting closer to the house, like the rain starts getting louder. I'm like, this is really like that. It was kind of Inception. Like, this is strange. Like, I'm outside getting rained on. As I'm opening the door, I begin to get rained on. And I get in, I literally like walk in, and it's like, it just took me, probably 30 seconds to literally figure out what was going on. But and I don't know if this is common. It doesn't seem like it's always the case, but the water heater was in the attic or on the 3rd floor off of like a bedroom. And January timeframe, and the supply line had just totally busted and just had been spewing water. I think it had been vacant. The family had moved out for probably a couple weeks. I don't know how long it had been gushing water, but like literally 3 stories, water heaters on the top, like 2nd floor, like literally every single room covered in water. The walls are wet, water's dripping, like the drywall had completely fallen on the 2nd floor, completely fallen on the 1st floor. There's like 2 inches of water. The hardwoods the whole house had to be gutted and refurbished. And so I walk into this and I'm like, what in the F is going on? And the like rush of emotion. And so I like go back, and I'm standing on the porch, and my clients pull up, they get their dog out of their car. They're glowing because it's closing day. Like, they're getting the keys. And I'm like shaking, I'm like, I'm trying to get stammering. I'm trying to get these words out of my mouth. Cause like, guys, like, just take a look. So we walk in, and we're literally just standing in the living room, and it's just like a mess. So, craziest thing I'd ever seen. I hope I never have to see that again, because that was brutal, on a lot of different levels. But I did learn the lesson I did learn from that is, I just am a massive fan of doing final walkthrough. Like, if you can, like right before closing, because you just never know. Like, if we had done closing or final walkthrough like a week beforehand, or like 3 days before, and then it happened in between final walkthrough and closing, I just don't know what would have transpired. So, pretty wild story. But
the question that we've got to have the answer to is like, did we pass on that one, or did we move forward on that?
They actually, I was pretty impressed, because they were like, okay, like what's this going to take? Like, we love the house, love the neighborhood, but it was like at least like 3 to 6 months of, one of those kind of restoration companies getting in there, and it needed extensive work. So for their timeline, we just asked for, the release, and obviously the seller didn't need that. Now they were like, yeah, we get it. So,
Just put
But,
more of that real estate armor on you, man.
oh geez, yeah,
Fewer and fewer
seriously.
chinks with every year.
Right, right.
All right, so to kind of finish with the business side of things, it's a question that a lot of agents wonder about, and I think it's a personal opinion, but maybe something that a lot of newer agents have illusions about. But how many hours each day do you think a full-time agent, since you have been a part-time and a full-time agent, how many hours each day do you think a full-time agent should put in, and what can they do with that time, Sean?
I genuinely think if like you time block well, time maintenance is big. I like a minimum of like 3 to 4 hours a day. I think in that time, if you're doing the proactive lead generating activities like outgoing calls, connecting with folks, asking for referrals, adding people to your database, I think minimum. I just if you do that really well, I don't know why it wouldn't set you up to be successful, to have some traction and do really great business. I think it might have even been something Tommy and I have chatted over the years, or I've heard him talk about, but it's just a numbers game. Real estate is really metric at the end of the day, and like the more input is output. So yeah, like if I work 80 hours a week, I'm probably going to have X amount more of a result and an output than if I were to work, 10 hours a week. So I think there's a scale of, hey, what do I need for my life? What's healthy for my life? What's healthy for my family? What do I have time for? What do I want my business to look like? And I think it's probably person to person on kind of what that answer is going to be. But I think minimum full time, you got to be in the office, or home, wherever you're doing it, like your headphones in for 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours a day, following up with folks.
That's strong. That's really strong. And I like the idea of proactive lead generation, time blocking, being efficient with that time, right? Like you can work 8 hours, but did you work 8, or was it maybe a tale of two cities with how the day went?
Sure.
I love, selfishly, I love you saying, hey, you need a hours worked scale of what's good for you. I think comparison is the thief of joy. So if you're looking at a person that's putting in and receiving the results of a 60-hour work week, but you're putting 20 hours in, you kind of have to kind of say, hey, okay, well, my expectations are a bit unreasonable. Am I willing to do that, or do I need to scale this to something that's better for me? That's really strong. And I think those 3 or 4 hours a day, you are proof of this. I think those 3 or 4 hours of effective work each day lead to a little bit more opportunity, which is probably going to add a little bit more time worked as well, right? Like you generate the leads. Hey, we got to work them and close them too.
Sure.
That's really good, man. Y'all, you two threw such different takes at it, but all of it's so powerful. And there's a couple of things that intertwine, which I think that makes these sessions, the best for everybody watching. I've gotten good comments from people that watch after the fact. So just know that what y'all are doing today is a excellent sacrifice of time. I'm certainly grateful for it. And, especially for y'all too, if y'all ever need anything, I'm definitely somebody that you can reach out to.
Yeah,
and
man.
Nate, we need Nate on every one of these, man. Nate's got gimmicks, signs, emojis. Like his game is strong. I like your style, Nate.
Thank you, Nate.
All right, y'all. Thanks for
Thank
everything.
you all.
Thank you,
talk to
Larry.
soon.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
Larry. See you guys. Take care.
See ya. Hey, thanks, Logan.